Welcome back to WTF Republic and our series, We the People, but what the fuck does that mean? This is where we dig into the Constitution line by line, because apparently nobody else wants to read the fine print. Today we're breaking down Article 1, Section 4, the rules behind how we run elections for Congress, and when Congress actually has to show up to work. Let's start with the first part. It says, the times, places, and manner of holding elections for senators and representatives shall be prescribed in each state by the legislature thereof. Translation: each state legislature gets to decide how federal elections are run within their borders. That means they control when elections happen, like early voting windows, registration deadlines, and how long polls stay open. Where you vote, from the number and location of polling places to who gets access to vote by mail. How ballots are cast and counted, including things like ID requirements, ballot curing, and vote tabulation systems. Basically, they create the rules of the road for casting a vote in your state, even for national offices like Congress. You might be asking yourself, why does that matter? Well, because it means a voter in Georgia might have a very different experience than a voter in Oregon or Texas, even though they're electing people to the exact same federal institution, the U.S. House or Senate. For example, some states let you register and vote on the same day. Others require you to register weeks in advance. Some mail every registered voter a ballot. Others make you request one, justify it, and track it like a UPS package. Some states require strict voter ID laws, while others let you vote with a signature and a smile. So what's the bigger takeaway? This section puts a lot of power in the hands of state governments, and that's not an accident. The founders were deeply suspicious of centralized federal control. They wanted local governments to handle the logistics of elections because it gave people more immediate oversight, at least in theory. But in practice, it means that access to the ballot isn't equal across the country. Your zip code can determine how easy or hard it is to vote. And that's why this line of the Constitution is one of the most quietly powerful sentences in American democracy. But the founders weren't that trusting. Sure, they gave states control over how federal elections are run, but they didn't want that power to be absolute, so they added this crucial caveat. But the Congress may at any time, by law, make or alter such regulations except as to the places of choosing senators. Translation: Congress can step in at any time, by law, and rewrite the rules for how federal elections happen, even if states don't like it. So, if a state legislature passes laws that restrict access to voting, create chaos, or allow corruption to creep in, Congress has the constitutional authority to override those rules. This isn't just theory. It's the legal foundation behind major federal protections like the Voting Rights Act of 1965, the National Voter Registration Act, aka Motor Voter Law, federal laws on military and overseas ballots, and proposed national standards for early voting or mail-in ballots. But hold on, there is one exception. Except as to the places of choosing senators. Congress can't tell a state where its senatorial elections must take place. That means the physical locations, like districts or precincts, are still under state control. So while Congress can regulate the process, they can't redraw the map of where those elections are held. That's still a local decision. Why does this matter? This clause creates a delicate power balance between state and federal authority. States get first crack at setting the rules, but Congress gets the final say if they decide to act. So it's not just about logistics. It's about who holds the power to protect or restrict voting access, and whether that power should rest with 50 different states or be standardized by the federal government. This is the clause that makes both sides of the political aisle nervous, because whoever controls the rules controls the game. Back in the 1700s, this part of the Constitution was about striking a balance. The founders believed in local control. They didn't want some distant federal government micromanaging the logistics of voting in every state. They trusted that state legislatures were closer to the people and more likely to understand local needs, geography, and infrastructure. So they let states set the rules. But, and this is a huge but, The founders also knew that people in power like to cheat, or, at the very least, bend the rules in their favor. So they built in a safety valve. If elections ever got corrupt, chaotic, or just plain stupid, Congress could step in, take the wheel, and fix it. Fast forward to now. That little clause has become the legal backbone for some of the biggest voting rights battles in American history. Without it, Congress wouldn't have had the authority to pass the Voting Rights Act of 1965, which cracked down on racist voter suppression laws in the Jim Crow South, the National Voter Registration Act, which made it easier for people to register when renewing a driver's license, federal laws that protect overseas and military voting, and pushes for national standards for early voting, ballot security, and voting machine audits. And today, this clause is at the center of every fight about voter suppression, laws that make it harder for some groups to vote, gerrymandering, manipulating district lines for political gain, election interference, whether foreign or domestic. So when you hear politicians arguing over ballot drop boxes or voter roll purges or whether voting machines are secure, this is the section they're fighting over. It's not just dusty old parchment, it's the blueprint for who gets to vote, how that vote gets counted, and who gets to call the shots when democracy feels like it's on the ropes. This part of the Constitution sets up a built-in power struggle. On one side, the states who want full control over how they run elections, setting their own rules, timelines, and voting methods. On the other side, Congress, which holds the constitutional power to step in and say, no, we're changing the rules. That tension is by design. The founders didn't want a king-like federal government calling all the shots, but they also knew that leaving everything up to the states could lead to corruption, voter suppression, or plain incompetence. So they split the power, mostly giving it to the states, but reserving the right for Congress to override when necessary. And that power struggle? It's still playing out today. Every time you hear about court fights over gerrymandering, lawsuits over absentee ballot deadlines, or battles over voter ID requirements, it all traces back to this section. The Constitution gave both state legislatures and Congress a say, and that's created a centuries-long tug-of-war over who gets to control the vote, because the founders didn't trust centralized authority, but they didn't trust unchecked chaos either. Now, for the second part of Section 4. The Congress shall assemble at least once in every year, and such meeting shall be on the first Monday in December, unless they shall by law appoint a different day. Let's break that down. All right, Congress had to meet at least once a year. That was non-negotiable. The founders wanted to make sure the legislative branch didn't go radio silent for long stretches, especially since some early state legislatures only met occasionally, and that wasn't going to cut it for a national government. The default meeting day? The first Monday in December. That was the original plan baked into the Constitution. But, surprise, Congress gave itself the power to change the date. And guess what? They used that power a lot. Eventually, that December meeting date got tossed altogether when the 20th Amendment was ratified in 1933. It moved the official start date of each new Congress to January 3rd to shorten the lame duck period after elections. So, what started as a simple scheduling rule turned into a reminder of how the Constitution evolves. The founders wanted structure, but they also built in flexibility. These days, thanks to the 20th Amendment, Congress officially begins its new session on January 3rd, just a couple of months after the November elections. It might sound like a minor scheduling update, but this change quietly reshaped the entire rhythm of federal power. Before the 20th Amendment, there was a huge gap between Election Day and when the new Congress actually took office. Almost 4 months. That period, known as the lame duck session, let outgoing politicians who had already lost their re-election bids keep making decisions, even though the people had already chosen someone new. It was inefficient, undemocratic, and sometimes dangerous. So, in 1933, the 20th Amendment came along and said, let's stop dragging our feet. Congress will now meet on January 3rd, and the president will be sworn in on January 20th. That didn't dominate headlines. No riots, no scandals, no fanfare. But it totally restructured how quickly power transfers after an election. It shortened the lame duck window, forced new lawmakers to hit the ground running, and brought our timeline a little closer to reality. Because when the people speak at the ballot box, the system shouldn't wait 4 months to listen. So Article 1, Section 4 isn't flashy. No dramatic language, no lofty ideals. But this little chunk of text is the legal backbone of every federal election in America. It's the reason voting works one way in Texas and a totally different way in Oregon. That's why voter ID laws, early voting, absentee ballots, and even redistricting maps can become national battles. Because this section gives states the power to run election. But it also gives Congress the power to step in and change the rules. Sometimes that means protecting voting rights. Sometimes it means tightening access. Sometimes it means doing nothing and letting the chaos play out. This is where the fight happens, over access, over fairness, and over power. Your vote doesn't just depend on who you vote for. It depends on who's in charge of setting the rules. And that, right there, is the heart of our constitutional republic and the battleground for its future. And there you have it, your deep dive into Article 1, Section 4, the part of the Constitution that quietly controls how our constitutional republic actually works. If you learned something, or if you just enjoy watching me yell about parchment and power struggles, thank you for being here. This series literally exists because of people like you. People who care, who question, who read the damn footnotes. So don't stop now, because here's the truth. If we don't read the fine print, someone else will write it for us. They'll draw the maps, they'll set the rules, they'll decide who gets to vote and whose vote counts. Keep questioning, keep showing up, and if you're into this kind of breakdown, you know what to do. Like, follow, share, or yell it from your rooftop. Make sure you're subscribed to the Patreon to continue with We the People, but what the fuck does that mean?